Welcome to the second class of this fresh start in 3D modeling. If you're just joining this series or you have little knowledge on some fundamentals in 3D design, I'll advise that you watch the first class, then come over to this, as the topics we covered will help you understand what we'll be doing in this class better. In this class, we'll be learning how to transform primitives into products using cylinders to demonstrate this. Now, transforming and modifying primitives is amongst the popular ways of modeling things and objects. At the end of this class, you should be able to model all these products, also with their detailed covers. And if you want to practice more and support the channel, you can get the clay image reference bundle using the link in the description below. It consists of over 25 clay product references to help you practice and model more products after you take part in this training. Also, if you're into NFTs, you can patronize my Voguebot NFT project on OpenSea that has a crazy utility where I create a free animated fashion NFT for every piece sold. Also, kindly subscribe to the channel, and you can also join my 3D community on Telegram for more conversations, tips, challenges, resource sharing, and growth opportunities. And for this class, these are the 4 products that we'll be modeling, and we'll be taking this product one after the other. The class will go in a progressive manner where I'll repeat certain basics as I start, and then as we progress, I will repeat less so that you can also test yourself and apply what you've heard earlier. So if there's anything that confuses you at the latter part of this tutorial, you can always refer to earlier parts to see where I explain them better. So let's begin. A primitive is simply a basic or primary shape that you use to create other complex shapes. You can take this as building blocks or what you start building from. Examples of these are cubes, spheres, cones, discs, planes, figures, or in this case, cylinders. So to begin, we'll first load our image reference in one of the default viewport cameras, and in this case, we'll be using the front. We'll be using just one angle of the image reference, and that's the front view. Once you load Blender, this is what you see by default. I'll just hit A on my keyboard to select everything in this scene, and then I'll hit delete to delete them. So first, I'll divide my viewport here. So I'll go to the top right corner of this viewport, and then I'll left click and drag in this direction to divide the viewport. In this viewport, I'll hit 1 on my numpad to change this view to the front orthographic view. If you don't have a numpad, you can hit the grave accent key on your keyboard and hold it down, and to bring these options of the different viewport cameras you have. So you can select front from here. So we'll be modeling with these 2 viewports. So here in my front viewport, I'll hit Shift A to bring our image reference in. So I'll go to image here, and then I'll select background. So under background, I'll go to where I've saved the image reference. This image will be attached in the description below so that you can also have access to it. So I'll select the front here, and then it will just load this image this way. So note that this is not an object. This is just an image that's loaded at the background of this particular viewport camera here. So if I were to switch now to my top view, you see that there's nothing here. And then if I return to my front view, it's only loaded in my front viewport camera here. So I'll make sure this is selected, and I'll rename it in our outliner to image reference. Then I'll select the image reference. I'll go here to our image properties, and then I just want to move this up above the grid line. So there we go. Then I'll check opacity here, and I'll reduce this to 0.2. And we can still drag this down a little bit so we can see what we are shaping around this reference. So before I bring our cylinder in, note that we'll be starting with low segments to model our product, and then later we'll smoothen those low segments with a subdivision surface. So that means our model will first look like this, and then it will look like this after it's subdivided. So let's add our cylinder. I'll hit Shift A on my keyboard. It will give me these options. Then under mesh, I can select cylinder here. Another way I can do this is to go up here and then click add, and then you see these options again. Under mesh, you can select your cylinder here. I won't click it because I already have the cylinder. So before I do anything to this cylinder, it's important that I tweak some settings based on the type of product that I'm about to model. So this is the product we want to start with, this wine bottle here. So once you load your cylinder, you go down here and bring this menu up. Then the two things we're first concerned about is the number of vertices and then our cap fill type. So here in our cap fill type, I'll just change this to triangle fan first. We'll see how that looks later. So because this wine bottle is a combination of different perfect circles that vary in size, it means we can take our vertices down to as low as 8, and then you see how that reflects here. But once we subdivide this particular object, it will turn to a perfect circle. So note that a cylinder with 8 vertices will turn into a perfect circle when you subdivide it. So in order to have more control, we can leave it at 8. We can also go to 12, or we can also do 10. But I'll just leave this at 12. So let's minimize this. So now we can go to our edit mode here. So we can see our edges. So this was the option we selected earlier, the triangle fan for the cap. And then I'll move this using my move tool. So let's just drag this to this point. We can frame our camera to focus on this object properly. So first I'll scale these down. So you can either hit S on your keyboard and then just drag this inwards this way like this. Or you can use your scale tool here and then you click this circle. Once you click on this circle, it scales the whole object in and out. So mind you, I'm not scaling this inwards this way or this way. I'm scaling these objects together first because we want to leave it as a perfect circle. So I'll just scale this and place it with my move tool. I'll just place it here. So I want to mark my starting point. So that means I'll scale this up a little bit. I'll use S and then just scale it this way. And then I can move this way. So this is good as a starting point for me. Now simply the technique we're going to use will be to extrude these faces and shape it along this path. And that's simply all we need to do. So go to your edit mode. Then you go to your face mode here. And let's select all these faces. So now it's selected. We can move this down first. And from here, we can begin to extrude. So if you hit E on your keyboard, it will help you extrude this object. Then I'll just drag this to this point. Then I'll hit S to scale this inwards this way. Then I'll hit E again. I'll duplicate that. So watch where I'm placing these loops. So I'll hit S again. And then I'll scale it to this point. Here, I'll hit E again. I'll drag this up. And I'll scale everything together with S. And then let's do that for the rest. So this is what this looks like. So at this point I'll delete these faces because we won't be needing them. So I'll hit delete and then I'll select faces. So let's just create a very nice base here. So select all these faces. And then I'll insert this face. So hit I on your keyboard. So I'll just drag it in. Then I'll move that down. Then I'll insert the face again. I'll drag this down a little bit. Then I'll insert the face again. Then I'll drag this up this way. Let's add a loop cut at the base here so that corner will be sharper when we subdivide it. So I'll hit Ctrl R on my keyboard. I will drag the loop cut to the base here. And I will left click to drop it. So let's smoothen this object and see what we have. So I'll go back to my object mode. And first I'll right click here and change the shading to smooth. This is not the kind of smoothness we want, but it gets rid of those rigid edges. So to add the subdivision surface, go over here to your modifiers and then under add modifier, select subdivision surface. So as you can see, that smoothens this object and you can see the base we created the other time. So if this subdivision level is not okay for you, you can always come here and increase it to 2. Okay, the next thing we can do is just to create some thickness for this object. So you can either do this by adding a solidify modifier, but I'll use another method instead. I will go to my edit mode and then under the face mode, I'll hit A to select all the faces. Then I'll right click and then I'll select extrude faces along normals. So normals has to do with the direction your mesh is facing or your faces are facing. So if I extrude faces along normals, you can see that I can just either increase this, or I can extrude it outwards or extrude it inwards this way. So I'll just do that inwards. I can drop this here. So the reason we are seeing our object this way is because it's in a subdivision surface. So if we come over here and turn this subdivision surface off, you see we're back to our low segment mesh. And if you turn this back on, because we're in our edit mode, it will show you the smoothing mesh and then show you the low segment mesh. So you can perform actions on this low segment mesh and then also see how it's affecting the smoothing mesh. So here I can add extra edges to make this corner sharp. So if I go to my edge mode and then I hit Ctrl R again to bring our loop cut tool. So if I just place this cut here and then I just move it, you can see that the closer it is to another edge, the sharper it becomes there. So if we return to our object mode, say we already have this first shape done. So let's rename this wine bottle. So this next product is more technical than the first. It's still a combination of perfect circles that vary in sizes, but it has this handle detail here and also has some nice details at this area. So let's bring another cylinder in. So I'll hit Shift A on my keyboard. On that mesh, I'll select cylinder. So as we did earlier, I'll go here, I'll bring this menu up, but now instead of 12 vertices, I will increase this slightly so I can have some room to create the handle detail and then also have this flow as a perfect circle. So for this, let's just do 14. And I'll ensure the cap fill type is on triangle fan so I can minimize this now. Let's drag the cylinder into position. Make sure you're on your move tool so you can move it, or you use G on your keyboard and you can just drag it around here. So I'll scale this again, I'll scale this down using S on my keyboard. Then I can move this into position. So here I want to scale this on the Z axis. So the way I can do this is hit S and then hit Z on my keyboard, and then it scales it on the Z axis. Or you can come to your scale tool here and then just scale it on the Z axis here. The next thing I will do will be to rotate this cylinder to have two edges at the front and back aligned with where the hole for this handle begins. So I'll rotate the cylinder and stop when I have that exactly. You can hold Ctrl as you rotate to get a more accurate result. So note that when you make a selection, especially when you're in your wireframe mode like this, it will select all the points or edges that fall within that selection. So if I select this area this way, it selects this and this because that's what falls within the selection I made here. But if I were to switch the shading mode, see how that takes effect. So if I just drag over this point here, you see it will only select this because it selects what it sees here. So let's switch our shading mode back. I'll hit Shift C to switch our shading mode back. So if I just click and drag over all these faces here, you see now that we can make our detail around this area. Then we still have some vertices to complete our perfect circle here. So before we start creating any detail, let's complete the base mesh of this model. So let's move up here and then we'll select all the faces here. This time around I'll hit C on my keyboard to bring up the circular select tool, and then I'll just click here to select everything and I'll right click to leave that tool. So here, just as we did with the wine bottle, let's extrude this. I will hit E on my keyboard and then I'll drop it here first. We'll come back to create this detail here. So I'll hit extrude again and I'll just drop this here. Then I'll hit extrude. And from here I'll begin to scale. So I'll hit S to scale this out this way. I'll hit extrude again, take this up. I'll hit S to scale this. I'll just do this for the rest. So at this point, let's create a nice detail here. So hit I on your keyboard to insert the faces here. So I'll just insert that inwards a little bit like this. Then I'll hit E again and I'll just drag this up a little bit here. Then here I'll hit S to scale this out this way. Then I'll hit E again to extrude this way. We won't model this cover now, so let's just focus only on the body. So here I'll insert the face again to just create a nice mouth. Then I can drag this up a little bit, just a little. Then I'll just extrude again to this point. And I can scale this inwards this way. So I can delete these faces for now. I'll hit delete and then delete the faces. So let's come now to select these faces. Make sure you're in your face mode. Then I'll hit C again to bring our circular selection tool. Then I'll just click here at this point, then right click to take the tool away. So let's frame this properly here. So I'll hit E to extrude again. bring this down to this point. I'll hit E again to extrude it this way. Then I'll hit E here. Then I'll start scaling this out. So we can take care of all these details later. So let's hit E again and drag this down. And I'll scale this inwards. So the same way we created this base, let's do that here also. So I'll hit I to insert the face, drag this down. Now hit I again, and I can drag this down. Now hit I again, and I can just drag this inwards like this. So now we have the base mesh for this bottle. The next thing we'll be doing will be to create this handle here. So first things first, let's create some extra cuts at this area and this area here. So I'll go to my edge mode and then I'll hit Ctrl R, and then I'll place this cut at this point here. Now hit Ctrl R again, I'll drag, and then I'll place this cut at this area here. So let's go to our face mode. Then I'll left click and then I'll drag over this area. So it selects all of this. So this area will typically fall within a box. So if you see this area like this, the way my mouse is going, you see this is like a box. So I always like to imagine that box first, then I create my detail within that box. So as this is here like this, I'll hit I to first separate these faces from the main one. So I'll insert the faces inwards this way. The next thing I'll do will be to go to my scale tool here. Then I'll scale this only on the y-axis like this. So I'm scaling this until I'm satisfied with just this particular area first. And I think I'm okay with this. So to create the hole at this area, I will select these two faces and also select these ones at the back here. As you can see, the faces at the front and back are aligned. Next, I'll insert the faces using I on my keyboard. Then I'll go up here to Edge, and then I'll select Bridge Edge Loops. And that will automatically create a hole with our edge loops and bridge those edges to form faces inside. So the next thing we'll do will be to shape this properly to get what we want, and then we'll also add more cuts to define the edges. So I'll go to my point mode for now, and then I want to select this point and the one at the back. So now you know that I can just go here, and if I drag around this point here, it will select this one and this one at the back for me. So I'll go to my scale tool so that I can scale that together only on the y-axis here. So let's select also this area here. So I'll go down here and I'll hold shift, and then I'll click and drag over this. Then it will add this selection. So now we have this point here and this point selected. I'll scale this on the y-axis and place it here. Then I'll do this also for this point here. So let's come here, click and drag, then hold shift, click and drag it here again. This is what we have. Then I'll scale it out this way. Then I also want to shape this particular point here. So I'll select this and I'll select this, and I'll just take this inward a little bit. So that works for me. Next, let's shape this area to fit in properly. So I'll select this here, and then I'll go to my move tool, and I'll just drag it to this point here. I'll select this, I'll drag it to this point, and then I'll just do this for the others. So the first loop cut I'll be adding will be one at the center here. I want to just go around inside here. So I'll hit Ctrl R on my keyboard, and then selecting here, as you can see it's going around, I'll just click and drop that there. So what I want to do is to select this point here inside and this other point here, and then I just want to drag them out this way. So that adds to the shape of the handle. And we can also do that here and just drag this out a little bit like this. So let's add a subdivision surface to this and see what we have first. So I'll go to my object mode here. So here, let's right click on this object. The shading is currently flat, so if I click this, you see that it's still flat. So I'll right click this and change the shading to smooth. So let's go to our modifier here, and then under add modifier, let's add the subdivision surface. So let's increase these levels here to 2. So we subdivide that by 2, and that makes it smoother. So this has in a way defined our shape, but it has not properly defined it for us. So let's go back to our edit mode, and we'll add some supporting edges to kind of redirect the flow of the smoothness. So I'll go to my edit mode here, and then I can stay in my face mode or my edge mode, but I'll stay in my edge mode, and I'll hit Ctrl R, and I'll first make a cut here at this point. So let me turn off the subdivision surface so you don't get confused by what you're seeing. So I'll go here and then I'll just click this to turn it off for now. So I'll make a cut here, and I can slide this up on the mesh. So if you want to slide this, hit G twice on your keyboard. So if I hit G and then hit G again, it will bring up a slide tool. Then you can just move your mouse up or down and to slide it on the mesh. I can just slide this and drop this here, and then I'll hit Ctrl R again, and then I'll drop this here. So this will make the smoothness here sharper a little bit. So I'll hit Ctrl R, and then I'll add one here. I'll hit Ctrl R again, and I'll click and drag, and I'll add one here. Let's turn our subdivision surface back on and see what we have. So let's switch to object mode to see this better. So this helps us define our shape better. But we can still add some cut to make this even better. So I'll go to my edit mode, and I'll add a cut here. So I'll hit Ctrl R, and then I'll just drag and I'll drop this here. Let's also go to the back here. Then I'll drag and I'll drop this here. So now this should look better when we put our subdivision surface back on. If you want this to be smoother, you can increase the levels here to 3. But for now, I'll leave this at 2. So let's just create these other details, and we'll simply be doing this by adding more cuts and shaping those cuts. So I'll go to my edit mode here, and we can start from the base. So let's put our subdivision surface off here. So to create this detail here, I can either make 2 loop cuts here, or I can make a loop selection, insert the faces, and I'll still get those 2 edges I need. So let's insert the faces. So I'll go to face mode. Let's make a loop selection here. So if I hit Shift Alt on my keyboard and then select around this face, it will make a loop selection here. Then if I hit I can then insert the faces inwards this way, and I can drop it here. Then I'll just hit S to scale this out a little bit. I'll add a supporting edge here to make this area sharper. So I'll hit Ctrl R, and then I'll drop a loop cut at this area. Then I'll hit Ctrl R on my keyboard. Then I'll add a supporting edge here. I'll just select this loop here. I'll hit Shift Alt, and I'll select this loop. Then I'll scale this out a little bit. So now if I go to my object mode and I bring this back on, it should look like what we want. So let's do the same thing at the top. So I'll put the subdivision surface off, and I'll go to my edit mode. So first, let's just select this loop here, Shift Alt. So I'll just drag this down to this point. So I'll go to my face mode. I'll hit Shift Alt, then I'll select this loop here. And I'll hit I on my keyboard. Then I'll just insert these faces inwards this way. And I'll scale this out this way. So I'll add loop cuts at this area here. I'll add another loop cut at this area here. Then I'll select this loop cut here. I'll scale it out a little bit. Also drag it up. And I'll go to my object mode to see what I have. So if I put my subdivision surface back on, I have this object fully modeled. This particular product is different from the other 2 we created, and the difference is that this is not entirely a perfect circle. So we're going to start this product as a perfect circle, but we're going to continue shaping it differently. So let's bring another cylinder in. So I'll hit Shift A, and then under mesh I'll select this cylinder. So for this, the number of vertices will be 8. So I chose this different product so I can vary the settings of the primitive. So I'll change this to 8 and ensure the cap fill type is triangle fan. Then let's place the cylinder properly. So I'll scale it. I'll drag it to the top here. Okay, so this is good for me to work with. So just as you have this type of sanitizer in real life, the top of the product is usually a perfect circle, and then the body is almost like a compressed cylinder. So let's just simply create these different layers. So I'll go to my edit mode here, and in my face mode, I'll select all these faces, then I'll drag them to this point. Then for now, I can scale it still as a perfect circle and drop it here this way. So understand that when I want to get a perfect circle, or when I want to get the entire mesh scaled in the same proportional direction, I can use the scale tool and use this selection to drag everything together. or I use S and I just scale them out together this way. And it's different from dragging it inwards like this, and it's now we'll know the difference between those two. So for this area, to define this shape, I'll scale this out a little bit more, then I'll extrude this. Then the way I scale this part now is what will be different. So instead of scaling this all together, I'll scale this only on the x-axis. So if I'm dragging it this way, you can see now that's only being scaled on the x-axis. Then I'll just scale it a bit on the y-axis to make the shape better. So this is different from a perfect circle. So at this area, I also select these 2 points and I'll scale those 2 points in a little bit this way. Let's go to our face mode and then select this, and then now we can drag this back out. So what I've simply done is just to determine the shape that I want to continue extruding with. So let me make sure this fits the reference. So this is the kind of shape I want, and you see how this plays out in a bit. So with this face is selected, let's continue extruding. So I'll hit E, and then now we're working only with the x-axis here, and sometimes we can go here to extrude this outwards a little bit. Then we can continue extruding here. So ensure you're not clicking on this circle here to scale the entire object. Ensure you're only clicking on the x-axis here. So I'll extrude again. Now just scale this way, and then let's do that for the rest. So remember again, I'm hitting E to extrude, and then I'm scaling it only on the x-axis. So let's create a good base for this. So I'll insert the face, I'll go to my move tool, drag this out, insert the face again, drag this out, insert the face, and I'll just drag this in. So here, I'll select the faces at the top here, and I'll just create an interesting mouth like we did to the other bottle. So let's insert the face here, and I'll hit E to extrude, and I'll hit E again to extrude, and I'll scale this out together, and I'll hit E to extrude this. So instead of coming back to create our loop cuts, we can just create this here. Hit E again to extrude, hit E to extrude, insert the face, drag this up a little bit, then I can just extrude this out and scale this in. Then I'll delete the faces here. So if we go to our object mode, change the shading to smooth, and then add a subdivision surface modifier here, you see now that we have this object smooth. So this final product here is a bit similar to this other product. So for this new product, let's add a cylinder. So I'll hit Shift A on my keyboard, under mesh, I'll select cylinder. Now here in this menu, we're going to use 12 vertices. And the reason is because I want to have this edge is sharper than this one. I'll minimize this, then I will drag and place this. So let's scale this properly. So the starting point here will be the head of the product. Now why I'm starting with the head of the product is because it will be more difficult to start with the body, which is not a perfect circle, and then transition to the top here, which is a perfect circle. So it's better to transition from a perfect circle into whatever the body will look like. So let's just take this and we'll rotate this to fit properly. So I'll go to my rotate tool and rotate this along the y-axis. I can move this and drop it here. And we can start here. So like we did for the other product, let's go to our edit mode, then under face mode, let's make this selection. So I can use C to make all the selections. As we'll be working with rotation on this product, something very important for us to consider is the orientation of our gizmo. To make our gizmo match the rotation of our object, we can either set it to normal or local. So I'll go over here and then I'll change this to local. And you see now we can move these faces in alignment with our rotation. So here I'll scale this first. So this is still a perfect circle. We've not distorted it yet. So to shape this mesh around this reference, the keys we'll be using will be R to rotate, E to extrude, G to grab or move it around, and then S and X to scale it only on the S axis. Remember, we're not hitting only S. So let's use this tool. So I'll hit E to extrude here, R to rotate this a little bit, and I can just hit G to grab this. Now hit S and X to scale this way, and I can just shape this. So to get this perfectly, you can just rehearse with those keys. So I'll use these keys to just shape this around, then you can see how I'm flowing and then shape yours around this the same way. So for the base here, I'll quickly change this orientation to global so I can be able to move this out. So when you're done shaping, this is what you should have. So we can also shape the mouth here. Just do something simple. So I can select all these faces here with C. Now insert the face with I. I'll just extrude the face here just a little bit. Then I can delete those faces there. So to create these details at this area, you can see I intentionally skipped it. So first, let's shape this point to follow this reference. So let's go to our point mode. And I'll just select these guys and then I'll shape them appropriately. So now let's make a loop cut here. So I'll hit Ctrl R and then I'll drop one loop cut here. I'll hit Ctrl R again, then I'll drop one loop cut here. So what we just need to do here is to shape these guys in. So I'll go to my point mode and I'll just start dragging these points this way. So one last thing we'll do, let's just add the supporting edge here so this area will be sharp. So let's hit Ctrl R and then drop a loop cut here. So let's go to our object mode and see what we have. So if I click on this, I'll right click and I'll change the shading to smooth. Then let's add the subdivision surface. So let's go to add modifier and then select subdivision surface. So I'll make this 2. So to make these edges more defined, we need to take these edges here inwards. So I'll go to my face mode here. Then I'll hit Shift Alt on my keyboard to make a loop selection here. Then I'll go to my scale tool and then I'll scale this only on the x-axis like this. And as you can see, it's already bringing an interesting detail. So let's put our subdivision surface off to see what we have. We can scale this outward a little bit. And we can just add a loop cut here. I'll add a loop cut here. I'll add another loop cut here. And maybe I can add a loop cut here. So now I have the detail I'm looking for. So let's bring all our objects in and see what we have. So we can collapse this viewport to see this better. So I'll right click at the edge here and I'll click join areas. Then I'll select the area, the direction. So this is what we have. So to quickly create covers for this product, let's just divide our viewport back. I'll go up here and drag it. I'll change this to our front viewport and I'll change the shading mode to wireframe by hitting Shift Z on my keyboard. So let's create this cover real quick. So this is still a cylinder. So we have some interesting details we'll add to the cover. So let's add a cylinder. So I'll hit Shift A on my keyboard. Under mesh, I'll select cylinder. And then under this menu here, because we are creating a lot of details on the cover, I'll increase the number of vertices we'll have. So this, I'll set this to 70. If I continue, make sure your cap fill type is on triangle fan so I can minimize and move. So let's just kill this and place it properly. So I'll scale the cylinder this way and I'll go to my edit mode. Now make sure I'm in my face mode and I'll use C to select all these faces here. I'll right click to get out of the tool. And I'll just extrude this and I'll scale this with S. So I want to select the faces at the base of this cylinder. So it's either I hide the bottle here or I can solo this cover here by hitting the / key on my keyboard. So I'll go to my edit mode. So I'll make sure nothing is selected and I can use C to select these faces. And I'll just hit delete on my keyboard and then select faces. So with this deleted, I'll hit A on my keyboard to select all the faces. Then I'll right click and I'll click extrude faces along normals to create some thickness. And I can just add loop cuts now instead of coming later to add them. So I can just add here and another here. So now I can hit the / key again to go out of isolation. So to create this detail, I'll first make a loop cut here. I'll drop one here and I'll drop one at the base here. The next thing I'll do will just be to select these faces this way. So I want to select this way around this object. So to keep selecting this around, I can just hold Ctrl Shift and plus on my numpad. So the next thing to do is to hit I on your keyboard, then we'll select the face a little bit. Then we can just scale this down just a little bit like this. Then we right click and then select extrude faces along normals. So we just take this in this way. And now this detail has been created. So I'll just make loop cuts to tighten the edges. So I'll hit Ctrl R here. Then I'll make loop cuts here. Hit Ctrl R again, make another loop cut here. Here I hit Ctrl R and then place this cut here at the center. Now hit C, select all these faces here. Now just hit I to insert the faces. So now if I add a subdivision surface here under modifier, and then we go to our object mode, change this to shade smooth. This is what we should have. So if I just drag this up, you can see the cover properly. So that's for this cover. So this is another interesting type of cover. So I'll hit Shift A on my keyboard and then I'll add this cylinder And then for this, I'll set the vertices to 12. Make sure triangle fan is selected here, and I can minimize this. Then I'll drag and scale this properly. Let's bring the sanitizer in now. Here I'll go to our edit mode, and I'll select all these faces. Then I'll hit I to insert the face. Then I'll hit E to extrude this. Then hit I to insert the face this way. So we're not going to make these two objects the same. We'll use another cylinder to model this. So for this one, I'll just extrude it inwards this way, and I can delete those faces there. So I'll go to my object mode, and I'll get another cylinder in the scene. Make sure it's set to 12. Scale this properly. So the first thing we'll be doing will be to create a cut here. So I'll go to my edit mode, my edge mode. I'll hit Ctrl R on my keyboard, and then I'll place this loop cut here. Then I'll hit Ctrl R again, and I'll place another loop cut here. So now we can select the faces we want to extrude this way. So I'll go to my face mode. Then I'll drag, and then I'll just select around this. So I'll go to my move tool. I'll just move this first a little bit. Then I'll hit E to extrude this. Then before I do any other thing, I'll make sure this face is flat. So the way I can make this flat is I can scale this to 0. So if I hit S, which is for scaling, then I hit X to say scale it on the X axis, and then I hit 0. It will scale these faces to angle 0, and that flattens it out. What I can do is I can first extrude around this object, then shape it later. So maybe let's drop one here, and let's drop another one here. Then I can go to my point mode now, and then I can begin to shape this guy in. So here also, we'll do the same thing we did before. We'll go to our face mode, and then we'll just drag and select these faces here, and then we'll just hit E to extrude this. Then we'll do the same thing, S, X, and then 0 to flatten that out that way. And then I'll drop this selection here, and I'll extrude again with E to this point. Then I'll go to my point mode, select this, and then I'll shape this here. So the next thing for us to do before this is complete is to reflow this topology here, because we want to be able to add a loop cut that will go directly around this object this way. But currently these diagonal lines will interrupt that flow. So let's first dissolve those lines. So I'll go to my edge mode, select an empty area first, then I'll select these diagonal lines. I'll right click, and then I'll select dissolve edges over here. So we still have our points, so all we need to do is join this the way we want it to flow. So I'll go to my point mode, and I'll select this point and this point, and I'll hit J to join them, and then I'll select this point and this point, and I'll hit J on my keyboard to join them. And I'll select this point and this point here, I'll hit J on my keyboard to join them. Select this point and this point, and I'll hit J on my keyboard to join them. So now you see that if I hit Ctrl R, our loop cut can go around the object this way. So here we can select these faces and delete them. So the next thing for us to do is just to add our loop cuts, then we subdivide this model. So let's hit Ctrl R, add a cut here, add another one here, can add a cut here this way, and that should be okay. So let's add a subdivision surface. So let's go to our object mode, change the shading to smooth. Under modifiers here, let's select the subdivision surface, then we increase this to 2. So we need to add a loop cut here. So I'll go to our edit mode, and I'll hit Ctrl R, and I'll just add a loop cut at the base there to straighten that out. So if I go to my object mode, this is what we should have. So let's also subdivide this area here. So I'll right click, change shading to smooth, add modifier, subdivision surface. So we need to create loop cuts. Let's go to our edit mode and start creating those loop cuts. Then let's solo this guy. I'll hit / key again so we can select these faces and delete them. So let's put our subdivision surface off for now. I'll go to my face mode. I'll use C to select these faces. So here I'll insert the face first, then I'll just delete delete faces, and I can add a loop cut here. So I'll hit / again, and so now we put the subdivision surface back on. This is what the model should look like. So here we can either scale this up and then come to the faces here. Let's isolate it. Using Shift Alt, select this loop, then we'll unisolate it. Then we can just scale this inwards this way. And we can add a loop cut to hold it firm there. Let's go back to our object mode, and then this is what we should have. Then for the top here, you can add more thickness, select all the faces and extrude the faces along normals, and then adjust it to your taste. Let's now go ahead to create the last cover. Bring a cylinder in, leave this at 12. I scale this properly. So here I go to edit mode. I'll make sure I'm in my face mode. So select these faces, and I'll just grab this down to this point. I can scale this down, and I can extrude this to this point here, scale it, extrude it again, scale it, extrude it. Then here I can create this nice detail by inserting the face and extruding it inwards this way. So let's just create loop cuts to make this stand properly. So I'll tighten this up here, add another loop cut here, add another loop cut here, add one here, or add one inside here. I can come here, add one here, add one here, add one here, and so add one here. So I'll go to my object mode, and then I can scale this entire object and maybe grab it up a little bit, and I'll right click, change the shading to smooth, and then add a modifier, and then add subdivision surface. I'll increase the levels to 2 here, and this is what I'll have. Then let's solo this guy, remove the subdivision surface, go to my edit mode, my face mode. I'll select all these faces here, I'll insert them, and I'll delete the faces. And here I can just add a loop cut and add another loop cut here. And if I go to my object mode and then put my subdivision back on, then I'll hit / to unisolate it, and then this is what I'll have. So if we just bring everything back, this is what we should have. So let's right click here and join these areas so that we see this fully. So these are all our products modeled. Thank you for joining this class. In our next class, we'll be learning how to extrude new shapes from an existing mesh, and we'll also be modeling this complete kettle. So ensure you subscribe, and remember you can support this initiative by grabbing the product reference bundle in the description below, and you can also support by getting a Vogbot NFT on OpenSea, where you also get a free animated fashion NFT for every piece bought. All this information can be found in the description below.